It started with a phone call I didn't expect. My dad, 77 years old, proud, stubborn, was in the hospital. Not for something dramatic, just weakness. He stood up from his recliner and his legs gave out. No warning, no pain, just gone. That night, I sat by his bed holding his hand. He looked at me and said, "I used to carry you on my shoulders. Now, I can't even carry myself." Something cracked in me, because here's the truth. No one tells you. Decline doesn't always arrive as disease. Sometimes it shows up as a skipped step, a missed breath, a quiet tiredness you can't explain. We call it aging, but often it's starvation of nutrients, of attention, of intention. And what if I told you that one of the most powerful tools for resilience was sitting in your kitchen drawer all along? Not a pill, not a protein shake, just a sweet potato. It sounds almost laughable, but I've seen it shift energy, gut health, memory, and even joy. This isn't a trend, it's a return. And once I made it a habit, everything changed for him, for me, and maybe, just maybe, for you. Let me show you why. Part 1. The one food I almost ignored. I never thought a root vegetable would change the way I saw aging. It started last winter. Cold mornings, dull skin, and a sluggishness I couldn't shake. I thought it was just age doing its thing. But one night, sitting at the kitchen table, I watched my granddaughter peel a roasted sweet potato and eat it with nothing but a sprinkle of salt. She looked at peace, radiant even. I laughed and said, "You eating that like it's medicine?" She looked at me dead serious and said, "It kind of is, Grandpa." That line stuck with me. So the next morning, I roasted one myself. It wasn't magic, not at first, but within 2 weeks, something shifted. I wasn't as tired after climbing the stairs. My digestion, which had become, well, a topic of daily frustration, actually smoothed out. I even noticed my cravings changed. Less sugar, less nonsense, more calm. That tiny orange tuber sparked my curiosity, and I went on a journey, not just in the kitchen, but into the science behind what it really means to nourish yourself with intention. Most people see sweet potatoes as a side dish, a holiday item smothered in marshmallows. But underneath their humble appearance lies a natural pharmacy. For instance, one medium sweet potato offers over 100% of your daily vitamin A needs, and not the synthetic kind in capsules, but beta-carotene, the plant-based precursor your body knows exactly how to use. And this isn't a trivial detail. Vitamin A plays a starring role in protecting your eyesight, maintaining healthy skin, and strengthening your immune system. It's the reason your grandmother told you to eat carrots, and why sweet potatoes, even more so than carrots, are an anti-aging powerhouse. But there's more. Beta-carotene is a potent antioxidant. That means it doesn't just support your skin or vision, it protects your cells from oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is a fancy way of saying the slow burn that ages you from the inside out. It's like rust in your bloodstream. It builds quietly, fed by bad habits, pollution, chronic stress, until one day your joints ache, your mind fogs, and your energy disappears. Sweet potatoes fight that rust. A 2012 study found that people who consumed sweet potatoes regularly had significantly lower markers of inflammation and oxidative damage compared to those who didn't. Inflammation, as it turns out, is the silent fuel behind most chronic diseases, from arthritis to heart disease. Now, I'm not saying eating a sweet potato a day is going to cure everything. But I am saying this. When I added them to my routine, baked, mashed, even blended into smoothies, I started feeling like myself again. Not younger, just clearer, more grounded. If the first step to healing was delicious, would you take it more seriously? I did. And now, I can't imagine going a week without them. This is just the beginning. What comes next, how these root vegetables impact everything from your gut to your brain, is something most people don't know yet. Part 2. Sweet potatoes and cellular protection. When I was younger, I used to think energy was just about sleep and coffee. You rest, you recharge, you go. That was it. But as the years passed, I started feeling a kind of fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. It was deeper, like my cells themselves were tired. I'd wake up with a full night's rest and still feel like I hadn't slept. My skin lost its glow, my mind wandered, and I found myself avoiding tasks that used to be effortless. That's when I began reading more about cellular health. I'll admit, I used to roll my eyes at words like oxidative stress and free radicals. They sounded like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. But the truth is, they're very real and very personal. Free radicals are unstable molecules produced by your own body, sometimes from normal processes, sometimes from exposure to pollution, processed food, even too much sun. Left unchecked, they chip away at your cells little by little. You don't feel it at first, but over time, it shows in your joints, your memory, your skin, your mood. Sweet potatoes, believe it or not, are one of nature's quiet defenders against that kind of damage. The vibrant orange hue. That's not just pretty. It's a visual sign of high levels of beta-carotene, a potent antioxidant that your body transforms into vitamin A. This nutrient supports your immune system, helps regenerate skin. And here's the part that caught my attention. It protects the very structure of your cells. I remember reading that antioxidants act like shields. Not swords, not guns, shields. They don't attack, they defend. They catch the bullets before they reach your DNA. That image stuck with me. And I thought, if my cells are under fire every day, why wouldn't I want to feed them shields? So I started eating sweet potatoes almost daily. Sometimes mashed with garlic, sometimes cubed in a salad, sometimes simply roasted with a drizzle of olive oil. Within a few weeks, I felt less brittle, not just physically, emotionally too. Because when your body feels like it's being supported, truly supported, there's this strange side effect. Your confidence comes back. You move differently. You look in the mirror and think, hey, I don't look so tired today. And it's not vanity, it's recognition. It's the sense that your body is still fighting for you. One evening, I was chopping sweet potatoes for dinner, and my grandson asked, "Why do you eat those all the time?" I told him, "Because they help me bounce back." He raised an eyebrow and said, "From what?" And I just smiled. From life. That's the thing about aging. You don't need flashy cures. You need support. Gentle, consistent, grounded support. And that's what sweet potatoes have become for me. Now I know what some people are thinking. It's just a root vegetable. And they're not wrong. But even humble things can do heroic work when given the chance. Especially when eaten with intention. In the next part, I want to show you something most people completely miss, how this simple food doesn't just defend your cells, but feeds your brain in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Part 3. Cognitive benefits of daily sweet potatoes. It started with the fog. Not the kind you see outside on cold mornings, I mean the one inside your head. That odd haze where words take longer to arrive, where keys disappear into thin air, and where names sit stubbornly on the tip of your tongue. I'd laugh it off at first. Just getting older, I'd say. But deep down, I knew something was changing. Then came the day. I forgot the stove was on. I had set a pot of water to boil and walked away, not just to the living room, but out to the garden. An hour passed. By the time I remembered, the kitchen was filled with steam, the pot bone dry. No damage done, but that moment scared me because it didn't feel like me. That's what made me start looking at brain health seriously. Not just crossword puzzles and apps, but food. I kept reading about inflammation in the brain, oxidative stress, and how certain nutrients might help. You'd think I stumbled upon some obscure herb or exotic root. But no. I found my answer in something I'd already been eating. Sweet potatoes. Specifically, the purple ones. See, these vibrant roots are rich in anthocyanins, powerful plant pigments that do more than paint your food pretty. They have been studied for their ability to protect brain cells, reduce neuroinflammation, and even support memory retention. Here's a fun, slightly eerie fact. Researchers gave mice purple sweet potato extract, and those mice did better in mazes than the control group. Faster, more accurate, more alert. And no, I'm not saying sweet potatoes turn you into a genius, but the science is there. They protect neurons, improve signaling, and encourage blood flow to the brain. It makes sense when you think about it. Your brain, like any other organ, needs oxygen, clean blood, and calm conditions to function well. When it's constantly battling inflammation or struggling to get nutrients, things slow down. And that's when the fog creeps in. Since adding sweet potatoes regularly, especially purple ones, I've noticed my own fog lifting. Words come easier. I remember where I parked the car. And more than that, I feel like myself again. Not just sharper, but steadier. There's also vitamin B6 in sweet potatoes, which helps produce neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Ever wonder why comfort food is so comforting? Part of it's the chemistry. Sweet potatoes help your brain make the chemicals that regulate mood, focus, and even sleep. One afternoon, my daughter mentioned how I seemed more present lately. She said it casually, but I caught it. I held onto that moment like a bookmark in my brain. We forget how closely our sense of self is tied to cognition. When your thoughts feel dull or scattered, it's not just frustrating, it's unsettling. You feel distant from yourself, like watching your own life through foggy glass. Food may not be magic, but it can be a bridge. And sweet potatoes, humble, earthy, everyday sweet potatoes, can be part of that bridge back to clarity. The lesson I've learned: don't wait for a diagnosis to start caring for your brain. Prevention isn't flashy, but it's powerful. And sometimes the best prevention is already sitting in your pantry. In the next part, I'll take you deeper, not into the brain, but into the gut. Because if your brain is your command center, your gut might just be your second brain. And sweet potatoes, they're the bridge between the two. Part 4. Sweet potatoes and gut-brain connection. It's strange how something so quiet can affect so much of your life. I didn't think much of my digestion. Not really. I wasn't doubled over in pain or constantly running to the bathroom. But there was this low hum of discomfort, bloating after meals, a sense of heaviness that made me want to lie down after lunch. And worst of all, a growing feeling of fog, not just in my head, but in my body. Then one day, after eating a bowl of overly processed cereal, I felt exhausted. I sat on the couch and couldn't bring myself to move for hours. That's when I started wondering, is it just aging? Or is my gut trying to tell me something? What I didn't know at the time, and what most people still underestimate, is that the gut and the brain are in constant conversation. Your digestive system is wired directly to your central nervous system. That flutter in your stomach before a big speech, that post-lunch slump, that feels like a brain freeze from the inside out. That's the gut-brain axis at work. And this is where sweet potatoes come in again. I started including them regularly, not just because they're nutrient-rich, but because of what they offer to the gut. Soluble and insoluble fiber, prebiotics, resistant starch. All the good stuff that nourishes the microbiome, that complex universe of bacteria that lives inside your digestive tract and influences nearly everything. There's a weirdly beautiful truth in this. Your gut bacteria eat what you eat. And when you feed them junk, they get cranky. But when you feed them sweet potatoes, especially those rich in fermentable fiber, they thrive. Here's a slightly gross but fascinating fact. The fermentation of resistant starch in sweet potatoes leads to the production of short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These aren't just leftovers, they're messengers. They reduce inflammation, support the colon lining, and even influence neurotransmitter production. In short, what goes on in your gut doesn't stay in your gut. Since changing my routine, swapping processed carbs for roasted sweet potatoes, eating earlier in the evening, adding lemon juice or herbs, something shifted. My digestion improved, sure. But also, my mental clarity returned. My anxiety dipped. I felt calmer, steadier. Almost like my body and mind were finally speaking the same language. And there's something else too, bowel regularity. I know not glamorous, but when you're not constipated or cramping or feeling off every other day, it's like a cloud lifts. You realize how much tension you were carrying, not just physically, but emotionally. One of the strangest yet most impactful insights I came across was this: over 90% of serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, is produced in the gut, not the brain. The gut. So when you care for your gut, you're not just improving digestion. You're shaping your entire emotional landscape. Your energy, your motivation, even your sleep. Sweet potatoes aren't a miracle pill, but they're as close as real food gets, especially when eaten consistently. And gently, no drowning them in brown sugar or butter. Just simple preparation. A little oil herbs, maybe garlic. Let the roots do their work. My friend, a former nurse, once told me, when you treat the gut like it matters, the rest of the body follows. I didn't understand that until I lived it. Now I do. So, if you've ever felt the drag of unexplainable fatigue, if your moods swing more than they used to, or if your digestion just feels off, look inward and maybe, just maybe, start with a sweet potato. In the next section, I'll talk about something many don't expect from this root vegetable: its role in regulating blood sugar. Because sweetness doesn't always mean spikes. Sometimes it means balance. Part 5. Sweet potatoes and blood sugar balance. I used to think sweet meant bad when it came to blood sugar. Like most people, I had this deep-seated belief that if a food tasted sweet, it must spike glucose. It must cause that dreaded crash, the sudden fatigue, the irritability, the brain fog that crept in an hour later. But sweet potatoes, they challenged that assumption. It started when my doctor mentioned I was on the verge of insulin resistance. Not diabetic, but close. I remember the exact sentence, "You're metabolically tipping." I didn't fully grasp what that meant at the time, but the fear stuck with me. It wasn't about sugar anymore. It was about stability, control. So I made small changes. One of them, swapping out white rice and regular potatoes for roasted sweet potatoes. Not every meal, just enough to see what would happen. And something did happen. Unlike regular potatoes, which often left me drowsy, and bloated sweet potatoes gave me this steady, mellow energy. I didn't feel jittery. I didn't crash. It felt balanced, gentle. Later, I found out why. Sweet potatoes have a low to medium glycemic index, depending on how they're cooked. Boiled, even lower. They digest slowly. Their complex carbohydrates break down at a pace that doesn't flood the bloodstream with glucose all at once. That slower rise in blood sugar is key. It allows insulin to work properly without being overwhelmed. But there's more to it. The beta-carotene in sweet potatoes, particularly in orange and purple varieties, isn't just an antioxidant. It plays a role in improving insulin sensitivity by reducing oxidative stress in cells, one of the root causes of metabolic dysfunction. Here's something most people don't know. Oxidative stress makes insulin less effective. Think of it like static on a phone line. It distorts the signal. The more static, the harder it is for your cells to hear the insulin message. Open the gate. Let the glucose in. Sweet potatoes reduce the static. Even more fascinating, sweet potatoes contain specific polyphenols that inhibit certain enzymes responsible for breaking down starch into sugar. That means less sugar hits your system at once. Think of it like releasing water from a dam slowly rather than letting it flood. Now, I'm not claiming they cure diabetes. They don't. But they support a system that's trying to rebalance itself. And sometimes that support, gentle, consistent food-based, is more sustainable than anything in a bottle. There's also something psychological at play here. When you feel you're doing something bad, like eating something sweet, the guilt kicks in. But when you reframe that sweetness as nourishment, as support, the emotional relationship with food begins to heal. Sweet potatoes helped me do that. They became a symbol of restoration. One of my favorite tricks, I dice them. Roast them with cinnamon and a pinch of sea salt, and pair them with a little protein. It's like dessert, but functional. My blood sugar remains even. My cravings drop, and I feel full, not stuffed. And that's important, feeling full without feeling sluggish. I've also come to understand that sugar stability isn't just about avoiding disease. It's about protecting energy, protecting mood, and maybe most critically, protecting willpower. When your blood sugar is steady, you think clearer, you make better choices, you move through your day with less friction, less reactivity. Isn't that what we all want? So yes, sweet potatoes are sweet, but they're not your enemy. They're your allies, especially when prepared thoughtfully and consumed mindfully. The lesson here is simple but profound. Not all sweetness is sabotage. Sometimes it's strategy. And in the next section, we'll shift into a topic that's quietly powerful, one that touches nearly every chronic illness we fear but rarely see inflammation. Because the fight isn't just against sugar, it's against the silent fire burning beneath it. Part 6. The anti-inflammatory firefighter in your kitchen. The first time I heard the phrase chronic inflammation, I pictured red swollen joints or something you could see. But that is not what it is. Chronic inflammation is a silent thing, a smoldering fire beneath the surface. And that fire, if left unattended, burns through your health slowly and relentlessly. I remember the moment it clicked for me. My mother had always complained about her joints. Her knees would ache in the morning, her fingers stiffen in the cold. We chalked it up to aging. Until one day, her doctor mentioned the real culprit was not aging, it was inflammation. That word suddenly felt more urgent. That night, I dove into research. What is inflammation really? And how can food either fuel it or fight it? Sweet potatoes kept coming up. Here is what I learned. When you eat bright orange or purple sweet potatoes, you are not just enjoying a warm, comforting food. You are ingesting beta-carotene, anthocyanins, and choline. These are not just nutrients. They are natural inflammation fighters. Beta-carotene, the same compound that gives carrots their color, is converted in the body into vitamin A. This vitamin helps regulate the immune system and reduces the kind of overreaction that leads to chronic inflammation. It is like telling your immune army to stand down when the battle is over. Then there are anthocyanins. These give purple sweet potatoes their stunning hue. They are powerful antioxidants, but more importantly, they block inflammatory pathways. Think of them as silent sentinels, standing guard over your blood vessels, your gut, your brain. Even choline, a compound found in sweet potatoes, helps by reducing the production of cytokines. These are signaling molecules that can escalate inflammation if left unchecked. But here is what struck me the most. You do not have to eat a mountain of sweet potatoes to see the benefit. Just a modest serving daily starts shifting your internal chemistry. What I found fascinating was a story of a rural community in Okinawa, Japan. Their diet was rich in purple sweet potatoes, and they had some of the lowest rates of chronic inflammatory disease in the world. Coincidence? Possibly. But correlation enough to be worth noting. I decided to experiment. I added a small baked sweet potato to my lunch every day for a month. The change was not dramatic. It was subtle. My hands did not feel as stiff. My skin looked a little calmer. My digestion was smoother. It felt like my body was quietly saying thank you. Of course, I was still skeptical, so I looked deeper. I read about how chronic inflammation contributes to heart disease, Alzheimer's, arthritis, and even depression, and how managing it early is not just about comfort, it is about prevention. Most people think reducing inflammation requires fancy supplements or restrictive diets. But what if it is as simple as a food you already love? A food you can roast mash, blend into smoothies, or enjoy with a pinch of cinnamon. Sweet potatoes are not magic, but they are consistent. They are gentle, and they work in harmony with your body rather than against it. One strange but true fact: the brighter the sweet potato, the more anti-inflammatory power it carries. So that deep orange or vibrant purple, that is your visual cue that you are eating something medicinal. And here is the bigger idea. What if we stopped seeing food only as fuel or indulgence and started seeing it as communication. Because every bite you take is a message to your cells. Sweet potatoes say calm down, heal, rebuild. In a world full of stress toxins and triggers, we need more messages like that. Next up, we will explore a related topic. Weight, not the number on a scale, but how sweet potatoes can support sustainable, gentle, emotionally healthy weight management. Because the truth is, food can be your greatest ally if you know how to listen. So let us keep listening. So let us keep eating with intention. So let us keep healing. Part 7. Sweet potatoes and sustainable weight balance. The word diet makes most people tense up. Restriction, guilt, counting every bite. I know, because I've been there. But what if weight management didn't have to feel like punishment? What if it could feel like nourishment instead? That shift in thinking started for me with something as simple as a sweet potato. One afternoon, after a long day of work and a skipped lunch, I found myself in the kitchen, raiding the pantry. Crackers, cookies, chips, anything fast. My blood sugar was crashing and my brain was screaming for energy. I grabbed a bag of chips, paused, and then spotted a leftover baked sweet potato in the fridge. Warmed it up, mashed it with a little cinnamon. That was the first time I noticed how quickly it satisfied me without that jittery sugar spike. That moment planted a question. Could this humble route actually help me manage my appetite better? Turns out, yeah, sweet potatoes are rich in complex carbohydrates and soluble fiber. These two things work together like a slow-release battery. They give you energy gradually, not all at once, like a sugar rush. The fiber especially expands in your stomach and delays gastric emptying. Translation: you feel fuller longer. What's more fascinating is how sweet potatoes interact with your gut. Inside them is resistant starch. It isn't digested in the small intestine. Instead, it ferments in the colon and feeds beneficial bacteria. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Butyrate not only reduces inflammation, but also supports fat metabolism and hunger regulation. In simple terms, your gut feels good, your brain feels full, and your body stops asking for that third cookie. There's also a psychological edge. Sweet potatoes are sweet, naturally. So, if you're someone who struggles with sugar cravings, this food scratches the itch without creating chaos in your bloodstream. I've even tried making sweet potato brownies using mashed sweet potatoes and dark cocoa powder. It's dense, rich, and surprisingly satisfying. But here's a truth we often ignore. Many people overeat, not out of hunger, but out of emotional need. Boredom, stress, loneliness. Comfort eating is real. What I found is that including foods like sweet potatoes, grounding, warm, nourishing, provides not just physical satisfaction, but emotional satiety. A small bowl of mashed sweet potato with a drizzle of nut butter became my new late-night comfort ritual. It felt like care, not punishment, and that made all the difference. Of course, no single food is a miracle, but it's not about miracles. It's about momentum. One better choice leads to another. You feel a little lighter, a little more in control. You start trusting yourself again, and the science backs it up. People who consume more fiber-rich root vegetables tend to have lower BMI, reduced belly fat, and more stable blood sugar. Not because they're starving themselves, but because they're feeding themselves smartly. I always tell people, don't focus on losing weight. Focus on feeding your body in a way that creates balance. Sweet potatoes are perfect for this. You can eat them roasted with herbs in a salad blended into soups. They adapt to your life. They don't demand sacrifice. There's even something comforting about their texture. The creaminess, the warmth. It slows you down, makes you breathe between bites. That kind of mindful eating changes your entire relationship with food. Here's one odd but interesting fact. In a study, people who ate meals rich in resistant starch reported not just feeling full, but more emotionally satisfied. It was as if the gut bacteria signaled the brain not just that the body had enough, but that the soul did too. And maybe that's the hidden power of sweet potatoes. They don't just fill your belly, they fill the gap between hunger and wholeness. So, if you're on a journey to reclaim your health, your energy, your confidence, don't start with cutting things out. Start with adding in foods that love you back. Up next, we're going to dig deeper into the heart of the matter. Blood pressure. Not just as a number on a screen, but as a story your body is trying to tell. Because everything in your body is connected. And sometimes, the most powerful medicine is the most ordinary thing on your plate. Part 8. Lowering blood pressure. Naturally, I remember the first time I saw the number flash on the screen at the doctor's office. 138. Over 92. We'll keep an eye on it, the nurse said gently. But I already knew. My body was whispering louder than ever. Something was off. At the time, I didn't fully understand what blood pressure truly meant. I thought it was just about stress or salt. But over the weeks that followed, as I researched and experimented, I discovered something surprising. The root cause isn't just what we remove from our diet. It's also what we put in. And that's where sweet potatoes quietly entered the scene. One medium sweet potato contains around 500 milligrams of potassium. That's more than a banana. Potassium is essential for blood pressure control because it helps balance out the effects of sodium. In short, it calms the storm. When you eat more potassium-rich foods, your body can flush out excess salt through urine, easing pressure on your arteries. But sweet potatoes don't stop at potassium. They also contain magnesium. This mineral helps blood vessels relax and improves circulation. Think of magnesium as a natural massage for your arteries, softening the grip and letting blood flow with ease. Now, here's something that still amazes me. The orange hue of a sweet potato isn't just pretty. It's a sign of beta-carotene, an antioxidant that promotes the production of nitric oxide in the body. Nitric oxide widens blood vessels, reducing resistance and lowering pressure. It's like opening the freeway during rush hour. That means when you eat a serving of sweet potatoes, you're not just feeding yourself. You're supporting a network of silent mechanisms working to protect your heart, your brain, and your future. And don't think this change takes months. In one study, people who added sweet potatoes to their daily diet saw significant reductions in systolic blood pressure after just a few weeks. Without pills, without drastic changes, just food. There's something empowering about that we can eat our way toward health, not away from it. I started small, swapped out white rice for mashed sweet potatoes, added roasted cubes to salads, sprinkled cinnamon on top for breakfast. Over time, not only did my blood pressure begin to settle, but I noticed something else. I felt calmer, more grounded, like my body was finding a new rhythm. One morning after a walk and a simple breakfast, I took my pressure again. 122/78, normal, natural, nourished. Of course, sweet potatoes are not the whole story. You need movement, you need rest, you need to breathe. But food is the foundation. And when you choose ingredients that work with your body instead of against it, everything becomes easier. The mistake we often make is believing that healing only comes from restriction. But healing also comes from abundance. The abundance of nutrients, minerals, and care. A sweet potato is proof of that, and it's more than numbers. Lowering your blood pressure means protecting your vision, your memory, your mobility. It means fewer pills, fewer scares, fewer hospital visits. It means a better quality of life. I like to think of it this way. Every meal is either a message of support or a message of stress. Sweet potatoes are a love letter to your arteries, a small, warm orange reminder that your body still wants to fight for you, if you let it. Next, let's turn our gaze to something equally important yet often overlooked: your eyes. Not just for vision, but for connection, independence, and joy. Part 9. Supporting and protecting eye health. I used to joke that my glasses were just part of my face. But one night, something changed. I was driving home. The road was quiet, the headlights soft, but the signs, they were blurry. I squinted, blinked, squinted again. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about age. It was about neglect. Silent, slow, invisible neglect. See, we often think of vision loss as inevitable, something we accept. But what if I told you that a root vegetable, humble and earthy, could be part of the answer? Sweet potatoes are rich in beta-carotene, a compound our bodies convert into vitamin A, and vitamin A is essential for eye health. Without enough of it, the surface of your eyes becomes dry. You lose clarity, and in worse cases, you develop night blindness. That's why my trouble driving at dusk hit me so hard. My body had been warning me for months. I just didn't listen. Here's what I learned. Vitamin A protects the cornea and helps produce the pigment in the retina that allows us to see in low light. It's not a luxury. It's the baseline for seeing the world clearly, for reading a grandchild's drawing, or spotting the smile of a friend from across the room. But sweet potatoes don't stop there. They're also a source of vitamin C and vitamin E, two antioxidants that defend the eyes against oxidative stress. Think of it like this. Your eyes are windows, and oxidative stress is the dust that clouds them. Antioxidants are the hands that wipe them clean day after day. And here's something many people don't realize. Sweet potatoes also contain anthocyanins, especially in purple varieties. These compounds protect the eyes from inflammation and damage caused by blue light and sunlight. In other words, they act like built-in sunglasses at a cellular level. I started roasting purple sweet potatoes once a week. Sometimes I mashed them with a bit of cinnamon. Other times, I just cubed them and tossed them in olive oil. Simple, and every bite felt like a quiet act of care. A way to say, I see you, to my own body. One afternoon, my granddaughter brought over a picture she'd drawn. I saw every color, every detail. The bright pink of her flower, the uneven lines of her house, the tiny smile she gave herself in the corner. I smiled too. Not just at the picture, but at the fact that I could see it. That mattered more than I ever expected. What I'm trying to say is, your vision is not just about reading signs or avoiding glasses. It's about presence, connection, recognizing a face, noticing a bird outside the window. It's about noticing life in all its color. And sweet potatoes, of all things, are one way to preserve that gift. They're not magic, but they are powerful. They give your eyes what they need to stay strong and clear in a world that asks so much of them. So if you've ever struggled to read in dim light or found yourself blinking more often, don't just reach for eye drops. Reach for nourishment. Reach for color. Reach for the foods that want to protect you quietly and consistently. Next, we'll look at something deeper: the brain. Because seeing the world is one thing. Understanding it, remembering it, and staying sharp, that's another layer of health. And yes, sweet potatoes can help with that too. Part 10. Enhancing brain function and cognitive resilience. It started with forgetting where I placed the remote. Then I lost track of names, little details, the ending of a book I had just read. At first I laughed it off, senior moment, I'd joke. But somewhere inside it scared me. The mind, after all, is where we live. And I felt like I was slowly misplacing pieces of myself. That's when I began to look not just for memory aids or crossword puzzles, but for nourishment, real daily support for my brain. And I found something surprising in sweet potatoes, particularly in the purple kind. You see, purple sweet potatoes are rich in anthocyanins. These are plant-based compounds with powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. In the brain, inflammation and oxidative stress are two of the biggest contributors to cognitive decline. It's like rust on your neurons, slowly, invisibly eating away at connections, speed, sharpness. Anthocyanins help clean that rust. In fact, several studies show that diets rich in anthocyanins improve memory and learning capacity, especially as we age. One study involving older adults found that regularly consuming purple sweet potatoes enhanced working memory and focus within just a few weeks. I started small, swapping my usual white toast for mashed purple sweet potato in the morning, adding a spoonful to my smoothie, even baking slices into chips with a little sea salt. It wasn't just healthy, it was beautiful. And slowly, I began to feel sharper. But sweet potatoes support brain health in more ways than one. They're also packed with vitamin B6, which your body needs to make neurotransmitters, chemicals like serotonin and dopamine that regulate mood, attention, and sleep. A deficiency in B6 is often linked with irritability, depression, and cognitive fog. I didn't want fog, I wanted clarity. And then there's beta-carotene, the compound that turns into vitamin A. In the brain, vitamin A plays a role in maintaining the integrity of neurons and supporting neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to adapt, learn, and rewire, which means your brain isn't static. It can grow stronger. Even now, I began keeping a notebook, not for things I might forget, but for things I began to notice again. A neighbor's name, the verse of a song I hadn't heard in years, a new idea sparked over breakfast. I felt like my mind wasn't just surviving, it was re-engaging. Here's something strange and beautiful I learned along the way. The gut and the brain are deeply connected more than we think. It's called the gut-brain axis. And since sweet potatoes support gut health, they indirectly support the brain as well. When your gut is calm, fed with fiber, nourished with prebiotics, your mind often follows. It's not magic, it's biology. So, what's the takeaway here? Sweet potatoes. This simple, often overlooked vegetable might not make you a genius overnight, but they can help build the foundation for a clearer, calmer, more resilient mind. They can support your ability to recall, reflect, and stay present. They can help you remember names, and maybe, just maybe, remember yourself a little more fully. That's worth something, isn't it? Now, as we close this chapter on the sweet potato, don't just see it as a food. See it as a quiet ally, a partner in your well-being. And know this, your brain, like your body, is still listening, still hungry for support, still capable of growth. And it's never too late to feed it well. Sometimes, healing doesn't arrive with a grand gesture. It begins quietly. A soft shift, a small choice, like a sweet potato on your plate. And yet that tiny decision, repeated day by day, begins to echo through your body in ways you didn't expect. Your skin glows a little more. Your thoughts feel clearer. Your steps come back with strength. That's the beautiful paradox of resilience. It's not always loud. It's persistent. It's quiet nourishment. It's giving your body what it needs to remember how to thrive. Sweet potatoes won't save the world, but they might save a piece of your energy, your focus, your mood, your sense of control. And in a world full of loud solutions, maybe what we need most are the quiet ones that actually work. So, here's my closing thought. Your health isn't waiting for perfection. It's waiting for consistency, for kindness, for a simple act again and again that tells your body you still care. If this video meant something to you, please like it. Share it with someone you love, maybe someone who's feeling tired or scattered, or like their body is slipping out of their hands. And if you're with me on this journey to find strength and simplicity, type A1 in the comments. If you're still unsure, type 0. There's no wrong answer, just a choice. Do you choose momentary convenience or long-term vitality? Sweet potatoes might not be flashy, but they're faithful, and sometimes faithfulness is exactly what our bodies need. Subscribe for more stories like this. Leave your thoughts below, and most importantly, eat well, live well, and pass it on.